Talking about Pythagorean theorem word problem. So this first one says a ramp was constructed to load a truck. If the ramp is 9 feet long and the horizontal distance from the bottom of the ramp to the truck is 7 feet, what is the height from the ground to the top of the ramp? Round your answer to the nearest tenth of a foot. So when I deal with word problems, I love drawing some pictures. So with Pythagorean theorem, we do know that we're working with a right triangle. So I'm going to draw my right triangle here. And there's my right angle. And it says that the ramp is 9 feet long and the horizontal distance from the bottom of the ramp to the truck is 7 feet. So this diagonal line is representing the ramp. So my hypotenuse would be 9 feet, and then the horizontal distance from the truck, so the truck would be over here, to the ramp would be 7 feet. And they're wanting to know what is the height from the ground to the top of the ramp, which means that we are trying to find a leg. Okay? So, after I draw my picture, I can now find the missing side length by using the Pythagorean theorem of a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Remember that the main number that you have to plug in correctly is your hypotenuse, since your hypotenuse is your c. But the 7, it does not matter if you plug it in for a or b. Okay? So now we just simplify. So 7 squared is 49. 9 squared is 81. And then to get b squared by itself, we need to subtract this 49 on both sides of the equal sign. So then we're left with b squared equals 81 minus 49 gives us 32. And then we still need to get b by itself, so we need to get rid of this squared. So the opposite of squaring something is taking the square root of it. So we definitely want to square root on both sides to get rid of that squared, so that now we're left with b equals, and then if you take the square root of 32, it is telling us to round it to the nearest tenth. We would get an answer of 5.7. And we are dealing with word problems, so you do need a label. So we're talking about feet, so our label will be feet as well. Remember, you guys can pause the video at any time, and you can also turn on your closed captioning so that you can see what I'm saying in words. So part B, a 13-foot ladder is leaning against the side of a house. The base of the ladder is 5 feet from the house. How far up the house does the ladder stand? So again, drawing pictures is nice. So here's my house. I know my house is beautiful, thank you. So we have a ladder that is leaning up against the house, and that ladder is 13 feet long. And then it says that the base of the ladder from the house, so that's going to be talking about this part down here, because the base of the ladder is the bottom, to the base of the house, and it says that it's 5 feet away, and we're trying to figure out how far up does the ladder go. So once again, here's my right angle, which means that we are trying to find a leg. So in my formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, since I'm trying to find a leg, I'm trying to figure out either a or b. Okay? Make sure you plug in your hypotenuse first, because that's the main number that matters where it goes in your formula. So 13, your hypotenuse is always the c, so I'm going to plug in 13 for c. And then the 5, it does not matter if you plug it in for a or b. Okay. So now we can just simplify. So 15 squared is 25. 13 squared is 169. And then we need to get b squared by itself, so I need to move this 25 over to the other side. So to do that, I need to subtract it. So 169 minus 25 gives me 144. And then my last step to get b by itself, remember the opposite of squaring something is square rooting it. So then the square root of 144 gives me a positive 12. And it's going to be 12 feet. All right, next one. Marcus leaves his house and rides his bike 4 miles east. Then, he rides his bike 7 miles north. How far is Marcus from his house? Round your answer to the nearest hundredth of a mile. So, let's say he starts here. And it says that he rides his bike 4 miles east. So, think of a compass. North, east, southwest, right? Never eat Santa's waffles. So east is towards the right. So if I start here and he travels east, that means that he traveled 4 miles to the right. So now he's here. Then he rides 7 miles north. So north is going up. So this is 7 miles. And then we are trying to figure out how far is Marcus now from his house. So where he started was at his house. And we are trying to figure out where he is at now, how far is he away from his house. So we are trying to find this side right here, okay? So notice, here's my right angle. The side that is opposite of the right angle is our hypotenuse. So here, we're trying to figure out the C, okay? So after you figure out what side you're trying to find, you can now start plugging numbers into your formula of a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Since we're trying to find our hypotenuse, that means that our c is going to be the variable that we're trying to find. And then your legs, 4 and 7, it does not matter which number you plug in where, because by the commutative property, you are allowed to flip-flop them. And then now we're just going to simplify. So 4 squared is 16. 7 squared is 49. And then we can still simplify that. So 16 plus 49 gives us 65. And then just like the other two problems, we're trying to get c by itself. So we need to get rid of that exponent of 2. So getting rid of an exponent, the opposite of squaring something is taking the square root of it. So then the square root of 65 gives us a long decimal, but they're telling us to round it to the nearest hundredth, which is 2 numbers after the decimal point. So if we round it, it's going to give us 8.06 miles. Okay, so I want you guys to pause the video for me, and I want you guys to try out this one on your own, and then go ahead and play the video when you're ready for the answer. So again, pause the video, do D, do this problem on your own, and then play the video when you're ready. Okay, so you should have completed D by now. If you got 24 inches, that is correct. If you did not get 24 inches, then make sure that you watch what I'm about to do. So again, I like to draw pictures. So we have a television that is listed as being 30 inches. This is the diagonal distance of the screen. So the diagonal distance is 30 inches. If the television is 18 inches tall, then find the width. So we're trying to find the bottom part down here, okay? So notice that this bottom part is connected with my right angle, so I'm trying to figure out my leg of the right triangle. So when I plug in my numbers, again, make sure your hypotenuse is the longest side, the side across from your right angle, is always plugged in for C, and then it does not matter where your other number goes. So let's say I plug it in for B. Okay, it's super important that you plug your numbers where they belong in the formula, because if you don't, then you're going to get the wrong answer. So now I can simplify. So I have a squared plus 18 squared gives us 324, and 30 squared gives us 900. I need to get a squared by itself, so I need to move this 324 to my other side of the equal sign. So I get a squared is equal to 900 minus 324 is 576. And then my last step to get a by itself, the opposite of squaring a number, is taking the square root. So the square root of 576 gives us that 24. So good job if you got that. If you didn't, make sure you found your mistake and fix it. and then we'll move on to the last problem. So Sarah is constructing a tent. The base is 8 feet. The side measurement is 5 feet. How tall is the tent? So when you draw a picture of a tent, we are actually looking at this whole triangle here itself, okay, because that's what a tent would look like. And they're saying that the base of it is 8 feet, so the bottom of it is 8 feet, and the side measurement is 5 feet. They're wanting to know how tall is the tent. So if you notice, when we're trying to figure out how tall the tent is, this line is what creates my right angle. And we're only looking for how tall it is, so we just need to look at one triangle. We don't need to look at this one and this one. We just need to look at one side of it. So I need to look at this triangle right here, okay? Now, notice how your right angle, opposite of the right angle, is this 5 feet, and remember that your 5 feet is your hypotenuse, which is the longest side of the triangle. And if you notice, the 8 feet is representing this whole distance at the bottom. So if you use 8 as a leg, you are already telling me that that is not correct, because 8 is bigger than 5. And since 5 is my hypotenuse, that has to be the biggest side, which means that I'm not going to use 8 as my distance for one of my legs. I need to cut it in half, since I'm only talking about half of this triangle instead of the full triangle, to get a distance of 4 feet. Okay, because remember, we're only looking at half of the triangle, so if the whole distance is 8, half of it means that this distance at the bottom is 4, which would represent one of my legs. Okay, so since I'm trying to find the height, I can label it B, or you can label it A, and then you can now use your Pythagorean theorem to solve it. So my hypotenuse is 5, so I'm going to plug that in for C. I'm going to plug in 4 for A, and then just solve it. So 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25. I need to get B by itself, which means that I need to subtract 16 on both sides. And I get B squared is equal to 9. And then my last step to get B by itself is to square root it. So square root of 9 is equal to 3. So the tent is 3 feet tall. So this one was a little tricky. So just make sure that if you have a problem like this, you try to draw the picture, and hopefully you guys realize that if you're trying to find the height, remember we can only use a right triangle, which means that you can only use one or the other side. You can't use the whole triangle itself. Okay? So if you have any questions, just let me know, but you are free to work on your homework.